on the song Chester as a warm-up. Are you ready? Here we go. Chester, have you heard about Harry? Just got back from the army. I hear he knows how to wear a rose. Hip, hip, hooray for the army. Little faster, here we go. Chester, have you heard about Harry? Just got back from the army. I hear he knows how to wear a rose. Hip, hip, hooray for the army. Little faster yet, here we go. Chester, have you heard about Harry? Just got back from the army. I hear he knows how to wear a rose. Hip, hip, hooray for the army. Little faster, here we go. Chester, have you heard about Harry? Just got back from the army. I hear he knows how to wear a rose. Hip, hip, hooray for the army. Me. Okay, we were close, We can do it one more time. We're gonna get it right this time. I'm gonna get it right this time. You probably did. Here we go. Ready, sing. Chester, have you heard about Harry? Just got back from the army. I hear he knows how to wear a rose. Hip, hip, hooray for the army. I was closer. Maybe. I don't know. Good job getting warmed up with me, singing along fast and moving along fast, I hope. Let's move on to the next part of our lesson. Today, for our Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra, we're going to be starting with Variation E, the violins, and we're going to check out the string family today. So let's listen, and it says our tempo is brilliant, a la Polaka, which means brilliant, like a dance, like this Polish dance. And so brilliant generally means lively, bright. So let's see if we think that the tempo for the violins is lively and bright like a dance. And you can write down the mood and something you noticed about the variation. So here are the violins. So what did you notice as the mood or something that you noticed about the variation? Yeah, I agree. It definitely was lively. The mood made me feel energized, happy. What about you? And for the variation, for this one, for something you noticed, did you notice any other instruments or what else was happening in the variation? Was it mostly focused on the violins? Yeah, and they're pretty high pitched, right? You're able to hear their high pitched range. All right, will you give it its rating? And then we'll head to the next one. So variation F is the viola, and meno mosso means a little slower. So we're going to hear, does our tempo slow down or not? That's what we're listening for. So let's check out the violas. All right. It was much slower, right? What about the mood?
Yeah, I'd say melancholy, sad, lonely. What other moods did it make you think of? All right. And what about the variation? What did you notice about this one? Yes, I noticed it was very smooth. You could say elegant. Um, it was not real loud, right? So our slow tempo, soft volume. We call the musical term for smooth is legato, Legato. So you could have that on there. All right, well, you choose your rating for the viola. It's a really beautiful movement, but it does sound kind of sad. Okay, next we have our cello. And our cello, lusingando, is supposed to mean graceful or beautiful. So let's see what our cello part sounds like. What did you think about the cellos? I always think this one's really interesting because he uses a lot of the cello's higher range for this one, which is something I think is really interesting about this variation. The cello has a really beautiful, rich lower sound, but he tends to use the higher notes in this movement. You do hear some of the low notes, but a lot of it's on the higher range of the cello, which is kind of interesting. What about the mood? Yeah, this one makes me feel relaxed and calm. All right, well, you write down what you think about the mood and what else you noticed about the variation. Give it its rating, and let's check out the double bass. And this one, in tempo, it tells you that it begins slow and then little by little will accelerate to allegro. That's why we have a tortoise at first and then a cheetah. So let's listen for our double basses. Okay, did you notice the speed up? Yeah, so the Rondo, it maybe didn't take as long as you thought. It kind of was slower, and then there was just kind of a quick acceleration to the Allegro. I noticed that some of the notes were very, very low, for sure. I also noticed that their bows are huge compared to the other string instruments. They have to hold them in a completely different way because they're so big. What about the mood for this one for you? Yeah, I don't know what the mood is for me. It kind of is just interesting. Like I just feel like my interest is piqued. It was very interesting movement, but it doesn't make me feel anything in particular. How about you? All right, well, you write down your mood from this one and what you thought about it. The harp. I love this one. So maestoso is like majestic. That's why we have a crown there, majestic. So let's listen to our harp. Okay, what did you notice or find about the mood? I noticed there's only one harp in the orchestra. That's kind of crazy, right? I noticed that she really had to work to play some pretty quick moving notes, even though it wasn't like a fast tempo. Her rhythms, she's always playing a lot of notes quickly at a time, right? Plucking those strings in fast succession. As far as the mood, I would say angelic or regal, right? It sounded very, I don't know, fancy, you could even say, right? What else did you think of? And I would love it if you wanted to share something with me on Schoology or email or in a Google Doc. If you want to jot something down and share with me, I'd definitely love to see what you're thinking about our Young Person's Guide. Well, next time we'll be checking out the brass section. Ada's Violin is the true story of the Recycled Orchestra of Paraguay by Susan Hood, illustrated by Sally Wern-Comport. Ada Rios grew up in a town made of trash. Every morning at dawn, Ada heard the first garbage trucks rumble and roll down the road to Catura. Beep, beep, beep. Backing into the landfill, they tipped their loads up and crash! The trash came tumbling down, 1,500 tons each day. Ada and her friends watched as the gancheros, or recyclers, scrambled, tearing into plastic bags with long-handled hooks, pushing aside moldy produce and grabbing anything they could recycle or sell. The going rates? 5 cents for a pound of cardboard, 10 cents for a pound of plastic. This noisy, stinking, sweltering slum was not the most nurturing place. Ada watched, eyes wide, but she didn't say much. And yet, she liked to imagine each garbage truck was a box of surprises. One never knew what might be inside. Her father had found appliances, toys, perfumes, and antique watches. One woman even discovered a small box full of gold jewelry. Little did Ada know there was a bigger surprise waiting for her in the landfill. Every day, when Ada's parents went to work, Grandmother Miriam cared for Ada and her little sister Noelia. Grandma loved to sing rock and roll songs from the 1960s. The girls grew up to the tunes of the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Creedence Clearwater Revival. Ada loved to sing too, but only when no one was listening. Ada's dad brightened the night with stories and songs of great musicians. He turned up the radio and pointed out the sounds each instrument made. Ada heard one above all others. Zing went the strings of the violin. When the girls started school, Grandma returned to work as a recycler, collecting bottles and cans in the city. Classes let out at noon. Young Ada was in charge of Noelia until her parents were done with work. At first, the girls stayed close to home, playing with Grandma Miriam's doggies and making sand cakes in the dirt. Soon, they joined their cousins, playing hide-and-seek or a game of handball in the streets. In time, they ventured farther afield, walking down to the bodega to get candy. But Ada noticed the teenagers hanging out in the alleys, grumbling about life in the landfill looming ahead. What would happen to them? To her? To her little sister? She watched as the older kids turned to gangs and got into fights. One day, when Ada was 11 years old, her grandmother saw a sign posted on the wall of a chapel. Violin, guitar, cello, taught Saturdays at 8 a.m., Fabio Chavez. How Grandma had longed to learn music. Too late for her, maybe, she thought, but not for her granddaughters. She signed them up without asking them, or their parents. Ada's heart sang out. Thanks to her abuela, she could leave her worries behind and learn to play. At the first class, the teacher, Fabio Chavez, had 3 guitars and 2 violins to share. Ada chose a violin right away, but 10 children had signed up. Frustrated, Ada and her friends found that there were not enough instruments to go around. And there was a bigger problem. Everyone quickly realized that the children would need to practice at home, but it wasn't safe to be seen with an expensive instrument in Catura, where a violin is worth more than a house. Watching the children play amid broken glass and rusty metal, Senor Chavez knew he had to do something. He remembered a band called Les Luthiers that made its own instruments. That was it. He asked Nicolas Cola Gomez, a ganchero and carpenter, for help. Senor Gomez found a discarded drum with a big hole in it. What could he use to fix it? He picked through the trash and discovered an old X-ray film. Would that work? It did. Senor Gomez kept experimenting, and others like Tito Romero helped. Inventing instruments wasn't easy, but they fiddled around, discovering which materials hit just the right notes. They transformed oil drums into cellos, water pipes into flutes, and packing crates into guitars. Soon, there were enough instruments for all the children who wanted to play. Ada chose a violin made from an old paint can, an aluminum baking tray, a fork, and pieces of wooden crates. Worthless to thieves, it was invaluable to her. It was a violin of her very own. Senor Chavez set up a strict schedule of 3-hour lessons. The class had no classroom, so they played outside, despite the 100-degree heat and sudden downpours. At first, Ada and the others struggled. Sharps and flats clanged and clashed. Playing an instrument is a process. It doesn't matter if one is rich or poor, ugly, fat, thin. You cannot learn to play an instrument overnight, Senor Chavez told the children. Some kids decided it was too much work and gave up, but not Ada. After lessons, she would practice at home, sometimes 2 hours a day. In time, the screeches, twangs, and tweets hit all the right notes. Their class became a small island where Chavez taught them to respect themselves and one another. Be kind, always say please and thank you. Say you're sorry. Be dedicated when you commit to something, Senor Chavez told the children. Soon, the ragtag crew of kids learned to tune in, to listen to one another, to band together. The recycled orchestra was born. From then on, there was something new in the air in Catura. Gancheros trudging home from the landfill might lift their heads to hear the sounds of Ada's violin, or the strains of Bibi's cello, or the strum of Noelia's guitar. A symphony of sound helped to lift them beyond the heat, the stench, and their aching backs. With her violin, Ada could close her eyes and imagine a different life. She could soar on the high, bright, bittersweet notes to a place far away. She could be who she was meant to be. As Ada's skill grew, so did her confidence. Once timid, she now took center stage playing solos. She helped teach the younger children too. Her teachers and fellow students took note. When she was 12 years old, Ada was named a first violinist. Imagine! She was first at something. Shortly after, she and her 39 fellow musicians were invited to perform concerts in Cachira and later in the nearby capital city of Asuncion. Word of this extraordinary orchestra spread. Soon, they were asked to perform in other cities and even other countries. Do you recognize some of these symbols and places where they are from? Ada and her friends flew on their first airplane, stayed in their first hotel, swam in the bright blue waters of Rio de Janeiro, sampled their first pastries and pineapple, and saw sights they never imagined. The world dazzled them, just as they dazzled the world. When Ada was 16, the orchestra received a very special invitation. They were asked to tour with a world-famous rock band. More than 35,000 people awaited them at their first concert stop in Bogota, Colombia. Ada was more than nervous. She didn't know how to enter or how to greet the audience. She went blank. She saw a giant stage with glaring lights and heard people screaming. But she didn't have to worry. As the recycled orchestra took the stage, the people who had paid to see the rock band cheered for them. The enormous audience sang and swayed to the music as the orchestra played, and as their performance came to a close. A crescendo of cheers, chants, and applause resounded across the park. The astonished kids bowed, grinning at one another. They had discovered the surprise waiting in the landfill. Buried in the trash was music, and buried in themselves was something to be proud of. Here is a picture of the actual recycled orchestra and some of their violins that they played on. In Schoology, you'll find another video about the actual recycled orchestra, and you can hear them playing. You can see some of the actual people from this story. So I encourage you to go check that out. I hope you've enjoyed the story of Ada's violin, and it gives you a lot to think about. It definitely gives me a lot to be grateful for when I think about the life that I have, the instruments that I get to see, use, and hear here, and how inspiring it is that those children and those people worked so hard to create this amazing orchestra out of recycled material.
Hey y'all, I have some rhythms here that we should already know. We're going to see if we can read through some of these. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and go. Ta, di, mi, ta. Let's see. 1, 2, ready, and go. Ta, di, mi, ta. Ta, di, mi, ta. Ta, di, ta, di, ta, di, ta, di. Cinco, ta, ta, ta. Now, let's see. If I look at this, I know that we have some new sounds that we've been talking about are low, la, low, so. So those are probably those. And I'm also noticing that we have do, re, and then mi are three notes that are always going to be a step apart. Do, re, mi. So if I have do right here on space 1, then it has to be do here at the beginning. Let's go through this. Here we go. 1, 2, say the solfege. Ready, go. Do, 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 mi, do, 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 mi, do, mi, re, do, la, so, do, do, mi, re, do. All right, let's try that a little bit faster. Let's add our hand signs with it as well. 1, 2, ready, go. Do, 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 mi, do, 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 mi, do, mi, re, do, la, so, do, do, mi, re, do. You may echo right quick. Do, mi, do, mi. Do, mi, re, do. Re, do, la, so. Do, mi, re, do. Let's see if we can add in these rhythms now. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, sing. Do, 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 mi. Do, 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 mi. Do, mi, re, do, la, so. Do, do, mi, re, do. Let's try that a little bit faster still. 1, 2, ready and go. Do, 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 mi. Do, 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 mi. Do. A little bit faster. Here we go. Ready and go. Do, 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 mi. Do, 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 mi. Do, mi, re, do, la, so. Do, do, mi, re, do. Let's see if we can go a little bit faster still. 1, 2, ready and go. Do, 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 mi. Do, 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 mi. Do, mi, re, do, la, so. Do, do, mi, do. A little bit faster. 1, 2, ready and go. Do, 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 mi. Do, 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 mi. Do, mi, do, la, so. Do, do, mi, do. Now this song also has some words to it. It goes, bought me a dog, bought me a cat. They both fight, but do not mind that. I ho, my darling. Bought me a dog, bought me a cat. They both fight, but do not mind that. I ho, my darling. Let's try it. Here we go. Ready and go. Bought me a dog. Ready. Let's try it. Go. Ready and go. Bought me a dog. Bought me a cat. They both fight, but do not mind that. I ho, my darling. Now, for the game, we have to think of some things that kind of won't go together. So we might have bought me a hat, bought me a coat. They don't fit, but do not mind that. I ho, my darling. Or bought me a bat, bought me a ball. Uh, might have bought me a cap, bought me a shirt. They don't fit, but do not mind that. I ho, my darling. It could be anything as long as you can make up something about it not working and still being okay with it. Because sometimes we have things that happen and we can't let it bother us. We just have to keep going. So, we might have a battle between a dog and a cat, but we're not going to mind that. We're going to get what we need to done. So, uh, Can you think of anything that might work with? If you do, feel free to share it. We'd love to hear it.